Adam Gonshor,
Chris,
welcome,
Rhonda.
welcome, yeah, welcome to the Heart Dealer podcast. Thanks for chatting today.
Chris, thanks for having me. I've listened to a few episodes already, and it has been great. But I mean, if you're already on me, then in the Rolodex, then you must have got a lot of no's. So I'm sorry it's that it hasn't gone the way that you'd like it to go. But hang in there.
It's downhill from here. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's only uphill. If you're on me already, then could only
Not,
go up.
not at all, man. You were one of my definitely first choices when I was putting together like an initial list of people that I knew within the industry that I wanted to reach out to. You were up there. I'm happy that we're making this happen.
I don't believe you, but I am honored. So let's chat.
I keep it real, man. I wouldn't lie to you. Uh, yeah, let's talk about your personal history, industry, things you've done, where you're going with your newest venture. Um, you and I obviously know each other, but you were born in Toronto. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born in Thornhill, which is about 45 minutes north of downtown where I live now. And that's where it all started for me.
So how did you get into music? Like, what was your upbringing like, and how did Mr. Adam Gonshar one day say, you know what, music's my bread and butter?
Kind of by accident. I mean, I was never really a musical person. We all listened to music. I couldn't play. I tried piano. I didn't do very well. I played flute in high school. I was not very good at that either. But towards the end of high school, I realized I wanted to become a journalist. I loved reading newspapers. That's what I wanted to do. And Ryerson, now TMU, was the place to go for journalism. And to get in, you had to have some clippings, some experience, something you've written or done in the media world. And a guy in high school like myself, I mean, everyone was in the same boat trying to get into that school, but I had never done anything like that. We didn't have a school newspaper, school television station. We had none of that. A friend of mine, Mike Levine, wanted to get more technical experience. He wanted to get into web development. I wanted to become a journalist. We teamed up and decided, let's make a website. It'll help both of us for what we wanted to do. Our first choice was to try to do something in sports. We were both big sports fans, but to get media passes, to cover the Blue Jays or the Raptors, we tried. We failed very quickly and realized that's not the way to go. But music, we're all surrounded by artists. Even if they're not incredibly successful A-list artists, you're surrounded by artists, garage bands, people next door that are trying to get
Mhm.
into it. So even if we were going to just create a website and interview local artists. That was what we decided to do. So in 2000, in high school at Westmount in Thornhill, we created a website called AndPOP.com. And
So let me jump in there. So I was under the impression that AndPOP was kind of already in university. That's crazy. So you had the wherewithal already in high school to be deliberate about your choices and say, if I want to do this, I need to do this. And then you teamed up with Mike to launch the website. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah, it was the last year of high school, and we kind of just went for it. We started off just writing music news, just not interviewing people, and we said let's try to interview someone. And we had heard that O-Town had just won ABC's Making the Band. I think it was called Making the Band, and they were a big deal at the time, and they're still touring now. And they were coming to Toronto, and we had reached out to their label, which I think was called BMG at the time, and we said, hey, we just started this website. Can we interview O-Town? And they were saying yes to everybody. O-Town was here for 3 or 4 days, and we're doing everything. And so we got lucky that we asked for that artist who was here for a few days, and they gave us O-Town. And with that interview, we took questions from fans, although we had no audience. We found O-Town message boards and started posting, "Hey, we're interviewing O-Town. Do you have any questions?" So we started getting the word out about AndPOP through that. And we interviewed O-Town and got a lot of viewers because we went back to those message boards and forums and posted the link. People started watching the interview. And from there, we got to go to other record labels and say, hey, we just interviewed O-Town, which at the time had the number one album in North America. And they said, oh, well, if they're interviewing O-Town, they must be legit. So we'll give them other artists. So that was our entry into the other labels, Warner, Sony, Universal. Um, they started letting us interview their artists. We kind of fooled everybody, but it helped us get an audience quickly. And yeah, so then it did get me into Ryerson, TMU, and Mike continued um, the technological side of things. And we decided in university, hey, let's just keep it going, see where this goes. So through university, I would be in class. At the end of the class, I would run out, go interview an artist, across town, come back, finish another class, and um, taught me how to balance things. And but yeah, we kept it going for a few years after that.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to come back to that and talk about it more. And obviously, by doing that, you immediately were dealing with publicists from day one, talking about like, booking things, interviews. How did you decide you wanted to do journalism? What was it specifically that was like, okay, I'm going to go in this route that then cascaded to the website and everything else?
That's a great question. It's probably something I never really thought of, but I think it's just the way that I grew up. What interested me was sports and the Toronto Blue Jays and Raptors when they came around in '95. I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And for me, I would watch the games, but I would always love reading about what I just watched because I would miss a lot of things. I wasn't an expert when it came to sports, but I'd pick up that newspaper the next day and read all about it and realize then that would be something that I'd really like to do, become a writer. And so even though it did get me into Ryerson, I tried to become a writer and realized I wasn't that good. I can put words together, I can put sentences together, but it was really intense. I ended up working, I'm sorry to jump ahead a little bit in my life, but I ended up working at the National Post in the sports department
Oh,
um,
cool.
for about a year and a half, just doing odds and ends, whatever they needed. And from time to time, I would go cover a game or do a story on somebody. And they sent me. This is when I really realized I probably wanted to find something else to do in that kind of world, in the media world, but maybe not exactly what I had thought. So they sent me to Buffalo to cover the NCAA basketball tournament. And my job was to watch the Duke basketball game. I forget who they were playing, and file the story right after it was done. That's how the sports reporters do it. They watch the game, and within minutes of it ending, they have their story filed because it's a race against time when that newspaper has to be printed.
Right.
So it was watch that game and send us a report. You've got like 3 minutes after the game. So I'm writing while watching it, and I think, oh, this story's great. I know what I'm doing. But then the lead started changing in the last 2 minutes, like basketball games often do. And it went back to Duke and it went to the other team, and I'm rewriting the story quickly. I had a great lead. I had a great story, but then it changed because Duke was about to lose. But then they took the lead back. I'm like, oh, I could bring that story back. Fantastic. But then they lost and Duke lost. And I'm sitting there. I've got 3 minutes and I've got to completely rewrite the story because I thought Duke was going to win. And now I didn't have a story. So I called the editor and I'm like, look, I'm sitting here. I have no idea what I'm supposed to send you. I don't have the story. He's like, all right, well, send me what you have. We'll figure it out. So he got it. He was an experienced editor, moved some words around, got it in the paper, then said, our next edition doesn't print for an hour. So you have another chance to, you know, edit your story and get it where you want it to be. Not everyone in the country is going to read the version that I'm about to send because we had to, send that first edition, but go
Mhm.
for it. So I got to edit it a little bit and it was passable, but I realized, yeah, like this is too intense. I couldn't do it. It was not for me. And to jump ahead even further, I realized I want to be a publicist. I want to be on the other side of things. I want to set it up. The journalists can stress out over things, but that wasn't for me.
And it's funny. I mean, you kind of touched on an important point there that I think applies to music as well. Um, Journalism is one type of writing, and there's so many different types of writing. And then within the writing process itself, there's so many other steps. Like, I don't consider myself a great writer. I'm a strong writer, but not a great writer. My specialty, especially after 20 years of publishing articles, of which I think I'm kind of at somewhere between 150 to 250,000 articles, in the last 20 years. I can read great stuff and make it better. I can spot the minutia. Right? You train yourself to see every comma, every missing exclamation mark, whatever it is, and then augment someone who's already great to even higher highs. But I don't consider myself a great writer. So it's funny that you're saying that you didn't want to be a journalist, but that's probably a whole different type of pressure, right? Like, we don't have deadlines. It's not like, oh my God, you got to interview this guy and then turn it in 16 minutes because otherwise it's stale. That in and of itself is a different ball game.
Yeah, I mean, I could have put in my 10,000 hours and got better at what I was trying to do, but I think it was just realizing that I think I like something better.
Hmm.
And so maybe I should have, maybe I could have put in those hours and got better at a certain thing. But with the music website, I had met a lot of publicists who would bring the artist, who I'd booked the interviews with, and then would bring the artist to me, or I'd meet them, and I realized I like what they're doing, and I had to figure out how do I get that job, and I realized I think my true calling was there. So I didn't put in those 10,000 hours for what I was working on, but I realized I think I would prefer the pivot, and that's what I did.
Yeah. And that's okay. I think everyone has their path, and ultimately, where your path is led is what it was supposed to be. Go back a second. I don't even. I think you and I are roughly the same age. I'm 45. So I finished high school was in '98. What about you?
I think I graduated in 2020, no, 2001. So I'm 42.
Okay, so similar age bracket. And I'm
Hmm.
envious because I didn't start Pure Grain Audio, what is now V13 Media, until 2005. So I was a baseball player. I was quasi pro, playing like World Juniors, playing in the U.S. And then I quit and got to university, and then I discovered uh, partying. So I was very lazy and stupid with my time, and I didn't get into my passion until later. I didn't really develop my work ethic until later, which is one of the reasons why I bust my ass so much now, because I'm making up for lost time. uh, but what was it like starting up the site? So you've realized what you want to do. You've realized that you need to do this in order to get into the program you want. Did you say, hey, like, we're going to learn WordPress and just get this thing online? Talk to me a bit about how you started the business.
Yeah, we kept it going because it was just fun to do, and that's kind of what I've been after my whole life, just making sure I wake up and I'm happy.
Yeah.
And back then, working on the website, was learning new things all the time. I wasn't the most technical person. That was Mike's job, and he taught me the best he could. But that wasn't the area I was focused on. But improving my interview skills and meeting new artists, and I with the basketball example, it showed I wasn't really the guy that could write something so quickly, but I really did enjoy writing profiles and sitting down with an artist and finding their story, and reading everything that there was about that artist and trying to find a new angle, trying to become an expert on them, and then wondering what don't I know about them that I could find out and write about or show on camera that other people don't know about. So
Mhm.
it was really fun trying to find interesting things that would get us noticed, that would get our interview watched. When they're doing dozens of other interviews, why should people watch our interview? So it was fun in that way.
So what were some of the tricks you used or learned to get that new info or new angle?
The biggest trick was just read everything possible about them and don't wing it. There were certain times where you can wing it and not you can't put in a million hours on every single artist, but I tried to do my best, and I ended up interviewing I think 500 artists by the end of it, over 7 years, and writing 500 profiles or close to it. And yeah, the thing was just become an expert, and that way I can ask myself, what don't I know? What do
Mm,
I want to find out? And really look for stories. I mean, read the bio that the record label gives you that they want you to write about, and play a game with them. I mean, you know, retell that story the best you can, but in doing so, find things that they haven't talked about yet or that's not too out there. I'm not exactly Nardwar. I'm not looking in every little corner. I'm not calling their third grade teacher. That was Nardwar's job. That I couldn't do that. But I was more, looking for interesting things that the artist may, I loved when the artist would say, I never thought about that, and had an answer. And in becoming an expert on them for those few days in preparing, I kind of knew where they would probably be able to have a story that they just haven't told yet, or want to talk about a certain topic that they just haven't yet. I would read every lyric. Sometimes, if there was something in there, one odd lyric that I would get a reference, that I'd see maybe a sports reference or a wrestling reference, suddenly I can talk about that, and they'd say like, "Oh, I'm glad you noticed because nobody's asked about that yet." I loved when
mm.
that would happen.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a nice thing when you get the compliment from someone saying, "Hey, that's a good question," or I haven't even thought of that myself.
Yeah, you must love
Interesting.
that.
I mean, it's you do your best, right? But I like your approach. It's funny because it takes me back to university. I was a sociology major, philosophy minor, and one of my professors, who happened to be Professor Joseph Gonda, no family relationship. Not a lot of
Yeah.
Gondas in Canada. I just happened to have a professor named Gonda. We were learning about the classics, the Socrates and the Plato, and he brought up the concept of the philosopher kings, and then it was like, this is where the band got their name and where they got their idea and their lyrics. And one of the lyrics was, "All I know is that I don't know nothing." Um, Tupac, and I've quoted this before in other podcasts. He has a line that says, "Even genius asks questions." The more you research, the more you know about the artist, the more you realize what you don't know about the artist or what you
Mm.
want to know about the artist. I like that approach, and I think I'm going to steal a little bit of it.
Well, I think you had the right words there. So yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
Um, my question though at the beginning was like, tell me about how you started the site. Like I know that you said Mike did some of the technical stuff. Like, do you know what platform you used? Did you register the business straight away? Were you just kind of like seat of the pants the whole time, or was there more strategy to it?
Man, I'd love to tell you there was more strategy. I'd love to tell you every program we used, but I mean, this is how we came up with the name, and I think it's a perfect metaphor for how we ran the site.
All right.
We didn't know what to call the site. My shoes at the time were And One. The brand was And One. I'm like, And One? We're covering pop music. Call it And Pop. So that's how And Pop was born. I looked down at my shoes, and that's kind of how we rolled. We worked on the site for 7 years. It lasted a few years longer than that when we both left. But yeah, for those 7 years, it was just figuring it out. Just did we register a business? I don't remember. I think we did at the end. We didn't the first few years. We kind of missed that internet bubble, and I think maybe you did with Pure Grain, where like that money was right there from the start, like in the mid
Yeah.
'90s. We were just after that in 2000, and it wasn't a regret because we were seeing where this would take us. It was, we didn't make a lot of money on the site, but we made some, and
Mhm.
that was also fun to figure out how to get banner ads and how to sell space and all that world was cool. One thing was cool was we saw the beginning of Google News. Google News became incredibly popular. I'm probably awful by a little bit, but 2003, 2004, whenever that Janet Jackson Super Bowl incident was,
Mhm.
um, I remember, right, much like every other site, every other newspaper, writing about what we just saw and putting a news article up about that. And for some reason, Google News used that as their top article. So when you would go to Google News, the top story in across the world was the Janet Jackson Super Bowl incident. And for some reason, my article, which was just a retelling of what everyone else was writing about, was number one. And we got over 1 million views of that article, which
Wow.
for us was huge. And then we looked at how much we made off advertising. And it was probably not much compared to like, now when we're trying to make a living. But back then when I was, late teens or early 20s, looking at those dollars coming in off that one article, it kind of pushed us in a little bit of a different direction as we still did interviews. We loved doing that part. We had to do that. That set us apart from other sites, being able to have the access to musicians coming through town.
Mhm.
We put more of a focus on the news articles. Um, trying to break it ourselves or retell other stories of what everybody else was doing, maybe finding a unique way of telling it, but just making sure whatever's hot that day, we better write about that because we might be on Google News and get a lot of views. I don't think we ever came close to that Janet Jackson one, but Google News helped us a ton back then get a sizable audience. And we got on average for probably a couple of years 250,000 unique visitors, which today isn't a ton, and compared to the US sites wasn't a ton, but really put us at the top of the list, near the top of the list for entertainment sites in Canada. And it was just run by a couple guys.
Mhm.
And, for us, that's kind of cool.
That's incredible. I mean, the whole game has changed so much now, but I appreciate you sharing that. It's really admirable how big it was, which ultimately led to, you selling it and all that, which I'll get to in a second. But nowadays, I feel like it's very important to think of every ecosystem as its own unit, right? Gone are the days of having a Facebook profile and then using that to send traffic to your website. You have to figure out, in my opinion, how to use each avenue in and of itself, right? So Facebook for me is not, I don't use Facebook. We have someone managing that. But like, how do we gamify Facebook and get people to interact there and then use that and then share within there? Obviously the website's important and we want to drive traffic to the website, and you can use newsletters and other tools to help. But even with the newsletter, you want the newsletter to be its own ecosystem so that you can generate revenue, you can generate subscribers, you can have the newsletter be its own marketable entity. And then you apply that to everything: Instagram, X, TikTok, newsletters, subscription based stuff, Flickr, YouTube, Spotify. They all have to be their own thing. And you can't just keep rehashing what we used to do, which is how do we drive everything back to one central node? Doesn't work that way. Uh, I've seen a lot of change too. I mean, the amount of writers that have come and gone, photographers that have come and gone over a 20-year period. And I've worked with some incredible ones. I mean, like um, Andrew King. He was writing for Pure Grain Audio back in the day, and then he went on to Canadian Musician Magazine. I don't remember his exact role there. I think it was editor, but I mean, he had a cool career, and even my business partner now, Lance Marwood. I mean, like he's one of the best writers I've ever worked with. He started with Pure Grain Audio, just doing some reviews and whatnot, and now we're launching businesses together. Things have definitely changed a lot in 20 years. We can't rely on Google News anymore.
No, and I hadn't thought about the website in a long time until last year when I started working with a country artist named Haley Benedict, and she's a big Taylor Swift fan. And we had talked about how I like had really never talked about this or told anybody, but I had interviewed Taylor Swift as one of her first Canadian interviews ever. Similar to O Town, she came to Canada, she came to Toronto a few times and would just talk to everybody. No one knew who she was yet. And it probably took two pitches to get me to say yes. I said yes to a lot of people, but I hadn't really covered country. But eventually we agreed to talk to Taylor Swift. She's very lucky that I'm in her career story. But yeah, we talked to her. And so I was telling Haley about this, and it brought back a lot of memories about AndPOP.com, which I had not thought about for a long time. But it also got me thinking, what would it look like today? I see what you're doing with your site and I see other sites, but I don't know that I could do that today with social media. Social media didn't exist when we started, and I kind of remember Twitter just becoming a thing towards the end of my run there, and I mean Instagram didn't exist. Facebook may have just started. I can't remember, but like it wasn't, it was social media wasn't a thing, and it wasn't a way for us to get visitors. So we had to get creative in a way to get those visitors and to get heard, which was fun, which was a challenge and part of it. But yeah, today, like I don't like going on TikTok. I mean, I like looking at TikToks and Instagram, but I don't like being on camera. So I don't know what it would look like today. I mean, I guess it wouldn't be me, it would be other people. But yeah, I thought a lot about AndPOP just the past year, and I'm glad it came up now because it's kind of fun looking back at what we did and how different it would have been today.
Yeah, I mean, for historic relevance or historical context, it's nice to have the site live. I mean, I mentioned this to one of my first guests, um, Luke from the Dirty Nil, and I was saying like the amount of times we featured him on the site, and to him, it's like not it's nothing because he's got a publicist and they've done hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews. But like we were growing up alongside that band, right? We've been online for 20 years now in one shape or another, and some of these artists were just starting out when you and I were starting our sites, and it's nice to see their career trajectory. And you never know who's going to make it or not. Um, and obviously, make it can be defined differently, but it was just really cool, you know. Being able to recount that to him, and then also reflecting on how much we've done within the Canadian scene. I mean, I think back to my first ever interview very soon after I started the website, and it was thanks to a buddy. I went to high school in Prague. Of all people that helped me out, it was a former like high school graduate from the International School of Prague who happened to be in music, who ended up working at Indigoot in New York. So he's in Brooklyn now. He works at Indigoot. They're managing all kinds of big rock bands like Hailstorm and Shinedown. And I'm like catching up with him 2005, 2006, and like, oh, I just started this website, and he shoots me a box. I got a box to my front door with like signed drum heads and drumsticks and stickers and CDs, and I was like, what just happened? Why did I get this? It was like Christmas. And then sure enough, he's like, hey, I got like Gigantour or some huge metal tour that was coming through Toronto. You want to talk to Life of Agony? And I had just been in Life of Agony crush, like fell in love with them in 99, 2000. And I was like, hell yeah. That was my first interview, like on their tour bus with, the drinks and the interview and then backstage and the big tour. How could you not fall in love? Next 20 years we're just like, let's do this.
Yeah, yeah. I still run into people who remember the site or remember me or we met because of the site. I once interviewed two members of Stone Temple Pilots who were part of another group. You might remember their name, but I forget. But I
Were the
interviewed them.
DeLeo brothers?
Yes, whatever band that was. So I interviewed them, and it was, part of their day of 10 other interviews, part of a tour of, 50 cities, hundreds of interviews. And I interviewed them for AndPOP for 10, 15 minutes. And then, like, a decade went by, and I met them again and didn't think they'd remember me at all. And he goes, hey, I remember you from yeah, you interviewed us like 10 years ago. Couldn't believe some people remember that. I mean, couldn't believe they remembered that. That was
Yeah.
amazing. But yeah, still working with some people that I had met in 2000, 2001 that are still out there. I mean, we're not all done yet. We're not that old. And it's nice to relive those days sometimes.
I think that the good people within any industry, the good people in life in general, know, we identify each other and then we trust each other, we build a rapport, and then we're comfortable working with each other. It's kind of only natural. Hence the reason, you and I are still talking now and doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your site for a second. So you did this for like I think you said about 7 years, editor in chief. Website was online for about 20 total, but in that time you ended up selling your share of the company. How did you even do that? I'm looking for tips.
Yeah, well, let me take you back to 2007. 2007, my goal now was become a publicist. I had fun with the site. I was making a little money, but nowhere close to a salary. I was doing that during the day. I was at the National Post at night, working in the sports department, and I was kind of doing two jobs. And had the goal of eventually somehow leaving and getting a job at a record label. And a guy that we both know named Rob Bolton, um, he represented some of our advertisements on our website when he was at another company, and he had just taken the leap over to Warner Music to run their digital department. And he gave me a call and said, I have to hire somebody to work with me. What do you think? And it was the perfect time because I was kind of ready to go. I just, I wanted to make a living. And I don't know if I started making a living when I went over to Warner, but I thought it would lead to that. So yeah, I went in for the job interview and took the job and realized I do want to be a publicist. This was for digital marketing, but let's see where this goes because I needed the entry in. I didn't want to just wait around for forever and keep doing this website for little to no money. So I can't remember what the question was, but yeah, I joined Warner. And what was the question?
I was just asking about how you sold out. Like, I don't mean
Oh yeah, how
sell
did I
out.
sell
How
it?
did you sell out of your shares? Like, how does even from a
I knew
business
this. I
perspective?
knew I was leading somewhere. So yeah, okay. I do media training sometimes to artists, and I think I need to media train myself. How to remember the question? That's a good one. I'll write that down and teach
That's the
artists.
point of this podcast. This is the media training in real time.
This is fantastic. So why was I telling the story? Because when I joined Warner, I had to give up the website, and I owned the website, 50% of it, with somebody else, and I'm sorry, I owned 33%. We eventually had someone named Robert Ostfield come on board, who I believe you know. And, or do you?
No, actually, I don't.
Oh, you should meet Robert Ostfield. I haven't talked to him in a
No.
while, but Robert was the money guy. He was like, I know what to do. We can make a little bit more money. And he was the business guy looking for partnerships. And it was great to have him on board for a couple years towards the end. But I joined Warner, and it was a conflict of interest to continue the site.
Mm,
I couldn't interview the artists that I was representing. I couldn't write news headlines, news articles about the artists I work with. So I had to give it up. And Robert knew Jordan Banks, who at the time worked for Facebook. Um, no, he hadn't worked for Facebook yet. He was a business guy. He had previously run eBay Canada. He was a big guy, big deal. He made me an offer to buy my shares, and so I gladly sold them to him for not the biggest amount, but hey, I got something out of it instead of just quitting. So
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. And now, still on my resume, which I don't really use, I put that I sold my site to Jordan Banks. Jordan eventually became the president of Rogers Media, I think. He ran the Blue Jays for a couple years and all of Rogers properties. So I mean, it was pretty cool to have him associated with me, even loosely, and to run into him a few times over the years and talk to him and know that I could you know go to him if I needed something. And eventually, he did become president of Facebook Canada, which was good for me, who just took on the role of digital marketing, to
Mhm.
be able to set up meetings with him. And so our lives crossed a little bit after that.
Really cool. So, I mean, AndPOP's not online currently. When did it come down, and why did it come down?
I think it lasted till about 2015, and Robert, who I just mentioned, was running it for that time, and they tried a few different things, and they did very well um, with launching a show with a TV network. There was some synergy there, and they did a lot of cool things. I think by 2015, maybe it fizzled out a little, but they also had an offer, and they sold it to a company I forget the name of. Sorry, I'm a little low on some of the details, but yeah, it was pretty cool for it to last almost 20 years, 2000. So maybe it was closer to 2020, just before the pandemic. And
That's really
yeah,
cool. I mean, that's a lot of longevity in the website. I'm too. I could definitely sell. It's everything is for sale, so to speak. But I would have a really hard time not having a clause saying like the website has to be online indefinitely. It just becomes this catalog, this archive of so much cool content, not just in terms of the artists, but in terms of all the people that I've worked with, all the photographers and the journalists. I love having their portfolios online, so to speak, not just for me, but for them. And I don't understand why people take down sites sometimes when, web hosting costs don't have to be a lot, especially now with all the different types of digital servers and AI tools they have. So why not just pay the annual, annual web hosting cost and keep the website up in perpetuity, even if it's not being updated?
yes, I am upset that it doesn't exist in archive form. There's some articles still on the Internet Archive, but no videos. And we did a lot of video interviews, so it would be cool to still have that, Taylor Swift interview up there somewhere, and some of the other stuff we did. I have it in a box somewhere, like the raw videos from our camcorder. So I will dig those up one day and be very embarrassed watching them. But yeah, I wish they could live on forever.
I mean, I think that what you and I should do later on is review the legal contracts and figure out how V13 resurrects AndPOP and reposts all these videos for you.
I think you're onto something.
I'm totally
Yeah,
down. I didn't get into video content until later, and everything we were doing was
yeah.
like written word at first. But video is so key, and I have some of that old stuff lying around too that I'm going to be getting to at some point. It's funny. It's like running the site. I feel like video is the hardest thing to do because if you don't have a good editor, people that can help with the editing, um, you can show up with all the footage you want, but where's it going to go? Editing is like so time consuming, and you need to have a certain skill set to do it. I definitely don't have the time.
It's at least becoming easier now with so many programs. You could edit inside of TikTok, you could edit inside of other programs. But for us back then, the editing, even though I wasn't the technical guy, was mostly on me because I wanted to get it up quick.
Mhm.
And I would kind of figure it out. But I mean, if you can watch it now, like it was terrible. Like I did not know what I was doing. So I would go to Microsoft editing or something, which was like Microsoft Paint, which is like just the basics. So you can put like a
Yeah,
blue screen that says AndPOP's about to interview this artist, and then the video would run for 15 minutes, like no editing. And then at the end, it would say like "Thanks for watching." So it was
yeah.
not. Yeah, we might have to edit it a little bit better if you're gonna resurrect AndPOP.
Hey man, we'll talk about that later. But it's funny, like even this program that I said we're using to record this Descript, I'm not an expert at all, but Lance helped me set up these scenes so I can upload a clip, like a short for my socials, just the raw file, go in, and after it's transcribed, say apply sequence or apply template, it just changes the layout automatically to everything. I change the text or change the copy, export, done. It's wild how easy it is now.
Wow. Wish we had that back then. And just transcribing things. I mean, sometimes we would post video interviews, sometimes I would do phone interviews or in-person interviews and just write an article. And yeah, for a 20-minute interview, I wasn't that fast a typer, so I would have to listen to that interview two, three times. It would take over an hour to transcribe, which could now be done in seconds.
Oh, hands down. I mean, like you get the little audio recorder, and then you're like pressing play, typing out, stop, rewind. What was the word? Because you don't want to screw something up, right? Journalistic integrity. You don't want to like have the wrong name or misquote anyone.
Yeah, even
Let's.
my like the way I recorded it was not digital, it was like on a tape recorder, so I would run out of batteries transcribing it. I'd have to go find batteries in my fridge to finish it off. And we're not that old. Like this wasn't that long ago, right?
No, but I mean, when you and I met, I had a full head of hair, so things have
Me too.
changed.
Time goes
Let's
by
talk
quick.
about like kind of the pivot. I really want to know more about your experience at Warner and the label experience because I have label questions, and then what you're doing now because obviously what you're doing now is where everything has led. Um, what was it like? Working for a major. Obviously, super cool. Getting a call, being headhunted, and saying like, "I want you to come work for me," and you start. And just like you and I probably we started at the bottom and we had to work up corporate ladders, so to speak. But what was it like? You were there for I think about 15 years.
Yeah, so 2007 is when it started, and I was in digital marketing with Rob. And a very quick learner because I was doing the exact opposite of what I had been doing with the website. So I would set up contests with my site. Now I'm setting up contests with other sites. I would,
Okay.
try to sell ads for my site. Now I was buying ads with Warner. So it was the complete opposite, but very familiar area. And like I said, I had my eyes on publicity. I gave it my all with digital marketing, and really had a great 3 years doing that. But then in 2010, a position came open in the publicity department, and went after that and got that. And that's where I really felt like my life should be going. And very grateful I got that position, and something I'm still doing today independently, music publicist.
Mhm. Um, what was the best thing about working at a major label? Was it all the free music? Was it meeting the artists? Was it the parties and the nights out? For you, what was it?
For me, it was working with developing Canadian artists and knowing that you could really help give people careers. Nothing was more rewarding than that. Yes, of course, it was cool to meet people that you listen to and to be able to say, you're Ed Sheeran's publicist and work that. But that was easy. Everyone wanted to talk to Ed. That was the easy part and great to put on the resume later. But to be able to work with artists, from Victoria Duffield when she first started, nobody knew who she was. She was on Next Star, a YTV show, and not everyone was guaranteed a career after that. But Warner signed her, and I got to work with her, and her first single went platinum. To be a very small part of that team was very rewarding. And then guys like Brett Kissel, who came to Warner as a relatively known artist in Alberta, but someone that wanted to be able to tour the world, tour Canada, become more known, and to learn. I knew nothing about country music, and Brett Kissel came in. He was just signed. It was my turn. We had a publicity department of 3 people, and we would take turns. Whenever someone would get signed, it would be the next person's turn. So I knew it was my turn. We signed Brett Kissel, country artist, first country artist signing in I think over a decade for the company. And I knew nothing about country music, but I knew country music was big in Alberta. So I figured I'm not going to have to do much work. We have an Alberta rep. He's going to spend all his time in Alberta. Laura, she's going to do everything, and I'll just sit back and look at her schedules and forward them on to Brett Kitzel. But Brett came into the office for the first time to meet us, and he said, "I want to be on ETalk. How do I get on ETalk? Do I need to lose the hat?" the country hat, the cowboy hat, sorry. And I was like, oh boy, this guy has big goals. I'm gonna have to do some work. And it was great to learn about the country industry through him and to figure out how do we shape his story so he's not just Alberta based, so that he's more interesting to the rest of Canada. And we did that somehow. And that's, to answer your question, that was what was rewarding, to be part of those teams looking at, social media did exist at this point, to
Yeah.
look at those numbers, to look at the iTunes numbers grow that you can watch, to look at all that, to now see people being able to tour around Canada. That was a really cool feeling.
I'm happy they mentioned Brett because I was at BlackBerry for a few years, and I think it was my last 2-ish years there that I was running the music store, like the digital download store, the BlackBerry equivalent of iTunes. I helped launch, run, and then eventually shut down that store. I think we were in 17 or 18 countries globally. And it was during that time, relaunching devices and all that fun stuff, that I had a lot of really cool music experiences. South by Southwest for the first time, visiting LA for the first time, and also meeting Brett Kissel on his first like little label tour, meet the press, etc. And I'm really happy that, to your point about Canadian success, he's one of those artists that you did a meet and greet, you sat down, you got to know him, but his career's actually continued to grow and be strong since. I mean, he's still putting out new stuff, I believe, through Warner to this day, which is awesome that, you know, that happens. I want to ask about your resume quickly, but I also want to, there's a kind of two-part question, is some of the artists that you've helped actually get there. I'd love to hear some of those success stories. Your resume, where you have your references, actually has Brett Kissel and also Chantel. I always get her last name wrong.
Yeah,
Kriviazzi?
Chantal Crevier.
Yeah, so you've got them as
Yeah,
references. So, like, is that a joke, or are they actually going to tell people why they should work with you?
no, it's no joke, but I haven't really applied for any jobs, so I don't know if I've actually used them, but I have the resume just in case. Um, I worked with both of them at Warner. Both have left. I've left. And I figured if I needed to make a resume and people wanted to call around and ask about me, that who better than the artist that I work directly with?
Yeah.
So I still talk to Brett. I'm not working with him at the moment. I still work with Chantel Kreviazik. So yeah, I put them on the resume, and nobody's asked to talk to them yet. I think I put a phone number available by request, so I'm not just giving it out to any job I apply for. But yeah, I don't know. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, if I do see a job out there that I feel like I should apply for, I've got the resume ready. And yeah, if they want to call Brad or Chantel and ask about me, then they're welcome to.
What are some of the most memorable success stories that you have from artists, whether it's like a big artist that you got to do a cool project with, or maybe a small artist who you helped and then they absolutely exploded. Give me an idea of one or two of your faves.
Great question. Those two are definitely one. And then I also worked with an artist named Fozia. Fozia's from Winnipeg, and she has roots in Morocco, and just the most unbelievable voice I had ever heard. And I was assigned to Fozia and knew nothing about her. And I was told, she's coming in 2 weeks. You need to set up a promo schedule. And I didn't really know anything about her, but got a few interviews for her. And we got CBCQ, which at the time and still is one of the most impactful interviews you can do. And they had performances still back then. This was probably 2017. And yeah, she came here. I really didn't know much about her. And as soon as she taped CBCQ and I saw her in action, I realized this is somebody special. And I shouldn't just check boxes and just get her anything I could. I shouldn't just fill up a schedule. Not something that I would do normally. I would make sure that every schedule had things that are worth doing and not just
Mhm.
busy to make you look busy. But yeah, I realized quickly, like, okay, this is someone you need to spend more time on because there's something there. And and now, I mean, her numbers have exploded around the world. She's huge in China. She was just on a Chinese reality show and got a huge audience there. She's big in many pockets, but that one being part of, that's, very little. She wasn't signed directly to the Canadian office. Even though she's Canadian, she was signed to Atlantic in the US. So we weren't as involved. We weren't involved with, every picture and every song selection and all that. But not to take any credit for any of her success, but to be part of that team and watch her grow and watch those numbers increase was awesome. And same for Fun. The band called Fun became one of the biggest rock bands or pop bands, I guess we're pop rock, in the world for a certain time. For a few years, they eventually broke up. And again, not taking any credit for any of their success, to be clear. But when I first heard the song called "We Are Young," which they were about to put out, I heard that song and asked my boss, or I didn't ask my boss. I told my boss, I have to work this band. That song is going to blow up, and it did. And he said, "Okay, you can take them because nobody else has heard of them except you." So I started working with Fun from those early days of that album cycle, and again to watch them go from very tiny venues really quickly over 2 or 3 years to selling out arenas to being the lead artist of festivals or the headline artist of festivals. Um, it's I don't think the word is rewarding because again I'm I was part of the Canadian office, so I was not part of their US team and
Mm.
wasn't involved with everything. But just, to know that I'm a very small part of that worldwide team that got to watch them go from very tiny venue to um, superstar success is awesome. And same thing about Ed Sheeran. Like I said, the joy of the job was working with Canadians, but still really cool to see again Ed Sheeran come here for the first time to do some promo with us with just one tour manager. Him and one other guy came here, and we ran around the city and we did interviews, and he met people that he needed to meet, and he played a very small venue, and then just a matter of probably 5 years to sell out stadiums, to sell out Rogers Center 2 nights in a row. Just awesome to watch, to get to know the artist a little bit and just to see them now not just have a career, but have a superstar career and get to
Yeah.
support their team around them. Um, Fun to watch.
You definitely talked about teamwork a lot, and that's something that I want to get into kind of as we go into what you're doing now. Um, I think you should definitely take credit where credit is due. You know, you're very humble, but I bet you had some really cool ideas and some cool initiatives that helped spur some of those successes. At the end of the day, obviously, it's the artist and it's the art, and if it's good and it resonates with an audience, that's kind of the most important thing. Um, why don't we wrap up the label portion with one last question? I'm not going to put you on the spot or anything per se, but like we just launched our own label. I'm using quotes because we're very, very early stages out of necessity because one of our artists on the development side um, wanted us to. And so we kind of discussed it internally and then talked to him about what we were going to do, what he thought it would be, and then chose to do so. But of all the artists that we work with on the development side, we do reiterate that it's not about signing, that labels now are not what they were before, that the industry's changed. My opinion personally is that if you always do what you always got, you're going to just repeat that same stuff, right? You're going to get what you get. Um, I also don't think that the industry was as good for artists as artists necessarily thought it was. I mean, you see all the different things about contracts and rights and albums being shelved and people being dropped and not understanding the terms. Um, what's your opinion on a label or artists being signed to a label? Every label is different. I'm not singling anyone out, but when you're working with artists on your end, some are signed, some aren't. Where do you think they should go? And I'm tying this into your point about a team.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the word team. Um, there's lots of labels that are starting now that don't have a lot of people working for them, and I wonder if it's worth joining that label without the help that you need. If you're just signing with a label because you feel like you have no other choice, then it's probably not the best decision. I think it'll work for a lot of artists. It won't work for others.
Mm,
Your team will work as hard for you as you work for yourself. Um, I've seen a lot of artists join. Major labels, indie labels kind of sit on the shelf for a while, waste a lot of time, get frustrated. I've seen a lot, TikTok is a big part of this question too now. There's a lot of artists who suddenly overnight become big on TikTok. Um, Not by design, but just a song took off. And then suddenly people come calling. Hey,
Mm.
we see you're making money. We see it's a big song on TikTok. You're not signed. We're going to sign you. We're going to make money together. That's wonderful. And it goes well for 6 months. But then you need to release another song. And that team might not be there with you to develop you. That song may have come out of nowhere. You might not have had another 6 songs ready to go, an EP or an album. And now you're playing catch up, you're recording more songs. And is that team going to fly you across the country to meet the people at radio that you need to, meet the DSPs that you should be meeting? Or are they just done with you because that song's done and your next one they don't feel has as much promise to go viral like the next one? Um, my answer is probably all over the place here, but not to be vague, but it works for some and it's not going to work for others. So you got to see what the situation is like. Are they going to, you have to ask yourself as an artist, are they going to put in time and possibly money to develop me in ways that I need to be developed? Um, you can't, as an artist, you can't be an expert in everything. Yes, you need to spend hours upon hours on social media these days and TikTok and Instagram, and you have to write and you have to record and all that, but labels should be there to help you with that. And sometimes they're not. So yeah, all over the map there with that question.
No,
Yeah, like you said with the word team, it comes down to who the team is, whether it's a major label or an indie label or someone like you. I don't know how many people are with your new label, but even if it was just you, I know the kind of person you are, and I know that you will find answers and find ways to become an expert and for the artist to be supported in all the areas that they need to. Whereas another label might have 100 people on their staff. And like I said, they might not put a lot of focus on you because they were more focused on your last song. So then in that case, if you got an offer from the big major label or an offer from you got to weigh that because it's not an automatic yes, I'm going to join that major label if they're just not going to put the time and money where they should, whereas you might invest that time that they need.
I think that was a perfect response. It wasn't all over at all. The messaging is consistent. Is that artists need to create. Artists need to focus on their craft and put out the best possible, music, painting, whatever it is that they're working on possible. Now in 2025, part of that includes social media because social media is content creation. So you have to get a handle on content creation. It's also one of the best marketing vehicles for the other content that you're creating. Are you going to learn the ins and outs of publishing and distribution and branding and marketing and social media and management and mental health and therapy, and merchandising and how to, like, at what time to post all the socials? It's impossible. I mean, sure, maybe there's one or two people that have the time and the backing and the desire to do all that, but at some point, I'm guessing the content creation is going to suffer because you're stretched thin across so many different things. So having a team is key. Um, I think with the team, it's not about label versus not label. And then I tell artists, like, don't get so fixated on getting signed. Create the content, and if an opportunity arises where you can get signed and it's a good deal, cool. Otherwise, just make the music. Um, but having people that you trust, that are reliable, that can offload work, that are there by your side no matter what, um, that's what it takes, in my opinion. uh, to answer your question, there's four of us total, myself and my business partner Lance. So we've got an incredible couple of women that are working with us on the publicity, marketing, branding side. We're growing, and then I obviously have the magazine and all the other people that are doing editorial, photography, etc. There. But when we take on a client, they get access to the full team no matter what, and we work on campaigns collectively. And my goal is to make that much bigger so that when you sign and you have this team, it's like you have access to all of us. And we're all doing different things because, similar to an artist, as a business owner, I too have to know when something isn't a strength of mine or when we've kind of like hit scale capacity with something and we need to hire or offload work to someone else who's better, like publicity. if we're doing publicity for an artist and that artist starts to get bigger and needs like a next level of publicity, maybe something more specialized or concentrated, that's why I'm calling someone like you to take on that work, because I know that you're reliable and you're an honest person, and that's something that you do 24/7 as opposed to us not doing it all day long.
The reason I did this interview was just for you to offer me publicity work for your artist.
Sold. Why don't we
Can we
talk
pause
about?
for 1 sec? I realize I now look like Phantom of the Opera, so let me just shut my blinds and we'll continue.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, that's better. Sorry about that. I was like all white here and all dark here.
That's okay. That's okay. Why don't we pivot into Collabo PR, because that's where you are now, and I think it's such a, like, important part of the industry in Canada, and also your story, right? You've had this amazing trajectory. You left Warner, similar to me, having left other jobs as well, and here we are, entrepreneurs doing things for ourselves, still in the same industry that we started in by our own choice because we love this, and that goes to you and your credit about following your passion and being happy with what you do. So you have your own publicity company. Where is Collabo going? How did Collabo start? What is Collabo all about?
My time at the label ended in 2022, and I was very happy when that happened. And I wanted to just take a year off and do absolutely nothing, like just stare at the wall, pretty much. I had been working, as we had talked about, from high school on without taking a break. And I really was going to spend the year just doing nothing. And at the same time of leaving, um, Warner had kind of restarted their domestic roster, their Canadian roster, and a lot of the Canadian artists that I was working with uh, were out of a record deal, and a couple of them that I had been working with, starting with Aaron Goodvin. His manager, I had been working with him at Warner for just a couple of years, and his manager called me and said, "Hey, you've been gone for a little bit, and so have we. We need a publicist. Are you starting your own company?" And I was like, "Maybe, but not yet." Okay, let us know when you do. Right. And then Alan Doyle's manager, same thing, texted me. Hey, did you start your own company? Alan needs a publicist. Like, I have not, but I'll let you know if I do. And I just continued to sit on the couch and do nothing. And after a couple months, they both followed up, and it was snowing, and I was doing nothing, and I couldn't even take walks because it was too cold. And I said, well, I'm just sitting here anyway. All right, I'll start doing publicity for you guys. So I started them and realized, wait, I like this. I liked what I was doing before. Why not just continue? And I could have spent a few years trying to find the next job. And I mean, I did have the resume ready, as you saw, with some artists listed there in case anyone needed to ask about me. Um, but yeah, independent publicity was never a goal of mine, was never even something I really considered in those couple months after leaving the company. But yeah, January 2023, I started, and I only had I think a 4 month break, and even during that break, it was 2 months spent trying to start the company and see what I needed to do, and um, you know, get a couple agreements done with artists. So yeah, started in January 2023, called Collabo PR because, like we talked about with teams, I like to collaborate. I think artists need teams. It doesn't have to be a big team. It could be one very passionate team member. Sometimes it's just me. But I like to collaborate. And collaborate PR was taken, so I just cut it in half. And Collabo PR was born, and January 2023. What year is it? 2025. So 2.5 years later, I'm still doing it, and I love it. And I answered a question previously. What was the thing I loved about being part of a big worldwide record label the most? And it was working with Canadian artists. That's what I still get to do. I get to work with developing and A-level Canadian artists and help them with their story and help them launch their careers or make their careers even better. And I still love doing it.
That's amazing. Good for you. It's funny. So I'm almost done reading a book called surrender experiment, and this guy who's now basically he has had the craziest story. I don't want to give away the story for anyone that might want to read the book, but he ultimately says in life we make decisions based on what we like, what we don't like, what we want to do or we don't want to do. And along the way, somehow he realized maybe I'm just going to let go of all that and just make my decisions based on what life is telling me to do or what life is showing me what to do. And in your case, life was like, dude, all these people, you need to do this. Have you started your company? And here you are. So it looks like you listened to life and you have had success because of it.
I'm a very basic guy. You've already talked to some people, and you're gonna talk to more who, like yourself, can quote things and have encyclopedic minds in certain areas in business or music or all that stuff. I don't. I just know what I like doing, and I like finding ways to keep doing what I do and keep waking up happy. And sometimes you decide to work with a client that didn't work out and kind of affects your mood. And I just need to learn, okay, how do I figure out how to get back on the path of happiness? And it's for me, that's just so basic. That's just me. So that's my goal. Be happy. Goal number two is make more money. I think that's the goal for a lot of people. But if I was waking up rich and not happy, is that better than not being rich and waking up happy? I don't know.
No, I
So
think you're
that's what.
absolutely I think you're absolutely dead on because they say money can't buy happiness. A lot of people with a lot of
Yes.
money will disagree, but what it
That
buys.
one I could have quoted. Jellystone in 2020 said money can't buy you happiness. That I could quote. So there you go.
I'm not encyclopedic. I think that you have just as much insight as I do. But my point is simply that like happiness comes from within. And if you wake up and you're doing
Mhm.
what you love, that is happiness. And if you layer money on top of that, then you're set up for like even more happiness because what that money will do is like augment that existing internal happiness. And I have no doubts that you're going to be successful in whatever you do. I have three publicity questions, and then we can wrap if you want. These are
Whatever
easy.
you want. Okay.
Okay. What is the secret to being a great publicist, not just a good publicist?
What is the secret to be a
So
great
from my
publicist?
perspective, and I'm sure you've got this running a
Okay.
website, I've pitched like 200 to 400 times a day from all kinds of different publicists from all over the world saying, listen to my song, new band, new tour, new album coming out, new show, new merch line, lyric video. What is it that cuts through the noise and really makes a publicist stand out as the top?
Well, I think you've sort of given me the answer there, to a question that I may have been lost on. But as a publicist, I don't worry about the money as the primary goal, because I work with a lot of independent artists. And if I just said yes to everyone, I would be very rich in year one, but I'd fail because not every artist needs a publicist. So a great publicist knows when it's not time to work with the artist. And I'm not going to call myself a great publicist. You can, thank you. But that's part of when I talk. I will talk to any artist. If an artist emails me and says they want to work with me, I'm extremely flattered anytime that happens. And it doesn't happen all the time. I'll take that phone call, but I will look into that artist and think about, can I improve their careers? And if I can't, if I feel like I can't, if I don't think it's time, then I'll have to tell them that. And I don't just take the contracts. And there are some publicists, and not, there's probably 5 to 10 really, really great publicists in Canada for musicians. And we talk all the time and we share tips and we share contacts and strategy. And then there are a couple that will take on everything. And that artist is wasting their money. And I'm not going to say who those publicists are. But if you're an artist and you're considering a publicist, talk to your other art, talk to fellow artists, talk to artists in your genre and out of your genre, and ask them if they've had a publicist. And ask them, did it work? Did you get your money's worth? Do you feel like you got your money's worth? Do you feel like they advanced your career at all? And quickly you will find that some artists will tell you that they worked with a couple names that will pop up over and over and over again, and you'll realize you need to stay away from those publicists.
Mhm.
And if you talk to, I will modestly include myself in this group, but if you talk to some of those publicists from that group of 10 that I mentioned, they might tell you it's not time to work with them, and take that advice and ask them why and figure out why and what you need to do and what you could be doing in the meantime, but don't waste your money. So with that said, I'm happy to talk to any artist ever, and we can talk about that and see if it's the time to work together or work with another publicist, or if it's not time, what else they can be doing. So if there's any artists listening that just want to talk to a publicist for an introductory call, um, find me and let's talk.
I appreciate that. Yeah, honesty is key, and I think that having the stones, so to speak, to be honest with artists is so important. You know, the amount of times that
Yes.
people within the industry will placate because they don't want to say your music's not good or you need development vocally. Artists love that.
Yeah.
Artists like that realness, and if they don't, then they're not going to be ready for it anyways either, right? Because they're going to get their back up and be defensive. Putting your creativity out there is going to come with negative reviews, even if you're the best artist in the world. Um, so going
Yeah,
into
and it
those,
might not even be, sorry to interrupt you. It might not even be a negative review of your music from the publicist, because I have turned down amazing music. But for me, I'm looking for a story. I'm looking for what's going to interest media. And it's not always just good music. Um, I don't know if there was really ever a time in my career that just good music was the story. It's very rare for that to happen. I
mm,
did mention fun previously, and honestly, that pitch, because my pitches to media aren't just, hey, this music's great. The media can trust me that when I finally had an artist that, was just developing their story like fun, I called the media, I called press outlets and said, okay, you never hear this from me, but just listen to this song. And they said, okay. And they listened to it and said, yeah, yeah, you're right. We got to interview this band. That's very rare. So I'm looking for a story. So yeah, it's not really an insult towards your music. It might just be something that you haven't thought of yet that you need to work on, the narrative of who you are. And
well,
and I'll also add that even there are some, I will call it a mistake. Sometimes I work with artists that I guessed that I could get them stuff, that I guessed that I could make their money's worth it for them, but you can never really guess um, accurately. It's very hard. So there are times where I didn't land as much as I would have liked, and there are times where I didn't think I would get as much, and suddenly I did. So it's very hard to predict. But for me, I just speak honestly with them and have the best guess that I possibly could. And if I really do feel like I could help their career, even if I hate their music, then it might be something that is worth that's worth working on together.
absolutely. I think that ultimately, if you're honest with them and honest with yourself, that you have a greater chance of success. Nothing's guaranteed, and I tell that to all of our clients as well. Like anyone that in this industry or any industry says, "I guarantee" or "I promise," that's a red flag because you can't guarantee anything, and you need to set expectations from the beginning, saying like you have to invest in yourself and you have to pay money for these things in order to get ahead. I'm a big believer that a lot of what you and I do should be more service based because you just need to invest in yourself to get out there. You need to invest in the team. And it's much easier to do that and retain all your rights and your ownership and your IP before you just start signing things away without knowing if it's going to work or not. Um, give yourself a chance and give the artist a chance. And if you're doing everything honestly from the beginning, then you'll have a better calculated assessment of how much it can grow. Right.
Couldn't have said it better.
Last two. Thank you. Last, you're very complimentary today. I love that.
You too.
Last two questions. What does publicity look like now, 2025, versus 10 years ago? What's changed? What are you doing differently?
Yeah, that is a great question. Social media has become a huge part of all of our lives, and that has become a part of publicists' lives in different ways. Part of our job isn't just to get an artist an interview, isn't just to get your music reviewed. It's to work with the artist on their branding and how they're seen and their social media, a little bit of everything. And so social media has become part of our lives in a way that it hasn't 10 years ago, for two reasons. One, because we as a team, whether you're in marketing or A&R or publicity or whatever, social media is now part of that artist's brand and product. So we all need to be part of those discussions. Ultimately, social media is run by the artist and they can hire people to help them, but it's still their voice. And if it's not their voice and you just hand it over to your record label or your management, it becomes very evident that it's inauthentic. So they
Mhm.
need to be authentic. And yeah, so that's the first part of how social media has become part of our lives. And number two, now media outlets are on social media, and that's it. There are no websites or TV or radio. They are just, content creators or influencers, as some would call them, but I like content creators. And um and yeah, that has become part of our lives, and kind of figuring out with each individual team, because it's different all the time, who handles that. Some want money, some don't. Some are fans of the artists and are willing to shoot content with them. Some insist on getting paid. That's a whole new beast that didn't exist a few years ago. For publicists, maybe even still today for some, but the rule was you don't pay for press. It's a partnership. I went to journalism school. You learned you don't spend money on your your uh, your interview subjects. You go land them. You don't pay
Mhm.
them. That's kind of changed now. And I think we can have a whole other 2-hour discussion about, is it fair to pay or not? But that is a question that publicists need to answer or adapt to, is where, do we need budgets now? Is that marketing? Is that us? That's still, I don't think, has been completely determined, but it's part of all of our lives. So that is what has changed the most in the last little bit.
That's fascinating. I definitely see a lot of the same stuff, buddy. Last question, and don't hate me. Why do artists need publicity in 2025?
Yeah, I don't hate you, but yes, some don't. Um, I think I could answer in the form of an example.
All right.
Um, I, I started working with an artist named Jade Hilton in March. We first started talking, and Jade Hilton is a Toronto-based artist. She dabbled in pop a little, and then realized her true calling was country music. And we talked on the phone, and it was just one of those conversations that I have with artists all the time of, do you need a publicist? Is this the right arrangement for both of us? And I wasn't sure at first. And she started talking about how she's one of the only Chinese Canadian artists out there, and I thought that was unique. It's not something that we wanted to pigeonhole her as the Chinese artist, or you
Mhm.
should only pay attention because she's different. But I realized in May it's Asian Heritage Month, and media are looking for stories of artists that might fit into that category. So we were delicate about it, because again, we didn't want that to be the focus. We wanted the focus to be, this is good music. She's a great artist. She's very entertaining, just fantastic. But there's dozens of artists out there. I'm not saying better or worse than her, but there's dozens of artists out there who are saying, I make good music. You should talk to me. So I said, well, I think we should take advantage of that opportunity and just get your name out there a little bit more. So in May, we did that and got a few interviews that we normally wouldn't have gotten if it wasn't Asian Heritage Month. And maybe that's fair, maybe that's not fair, that race is even a topic, but it helped us. And with that, she people saw the interviews, and she got offers from some festivals that she hadn't played yet, and PEI, some other shows. Um, and now people are interested because they're getting to hear her music, and we're getting more interview requests, and I'm pitching other outlets, not because you're a Chinese artist, but because you're releasing good music.
Mhm.
And people are saying, "Oh, well, ETalk talked to her. I guess there's something there. Global Morning Show talked to her. Sirius talked to her. So maybe we should talk to her too." And all that's happening. I'm not. Again, I'm not. It's not that I'm modest, but it's that I can't take credit for that. This was all her. It just needed to be kind of put together. The puzzle pieces just needed to be put where they belong. And so, do you need a publicist? Well, she didn't need a publicist, but maybe I fast tracked that a little by getting her some interviews that maybe she would have gotten in a few months, but she got now, and that led to a few more shows. So for her, if you asked her, I think I hope she would say that yes, I did need a publicist because I wasn't getting that before. So I think some artists need publicists. I think publicists will maybe think a little bit differently than how you thought. I think what you need maybe sometimes is more team members. I find that sometimes when you just have a conversation with your team, with anyone associated with you, ideas come. Maybe it's not publicity. Maybe if I'm talking with somebody, we have an idea about radio or social media or TikTok or something like that that we hadn't thought of before. So now something has come up from just a conversation that you couldn't have had without a publicist being part of your team. One of those answers are again where I kind of went all over the place, but maybe inside there somewhere was the answer. It might be what some artists need. It might not be what some artists need, but I just suggest that they have that conversation with a publicist and maybe it'll help them think a little differently than what they had thought of. And it will help them answer that question for themselves. Do I need a publicist? Do I not need a publicist? Or maybe I need a publicist when other things happen to me. And so just something for them to consider. How did Was that good? How did I answer that?
I thought that was fantastic. I mean, to kind of summarize our chat today, be true to yourself and focus on your craft. Make sure that you have a team to help get that out to the world. I think that from a publicist perspective, like a good publicist is going to, like you said, know when the time is right to work with someone and not just take on everything. Uh, I think that's actually a good opportunity for an artist to learn. If an artist doesn't have a team and they're like, who do I even talk to? How do I even begin? Publicist is not a bad place. I mean, even if you don't get the right publicist, you match with someone that's not as good as Adam Gonshar. Um, you're going to come out of that experience, whether it's 2, 3, 4 months, depends on how long the retainer is for, with a bunch of insight, maybe with a bunch of, okay, I'm not going to do that again, but at least you're getting insight and you're going in the right direction and you're not signing away all the stuff that you worked so hard to create. So maybe publicity is a fantastic entry point to learning the industry, unless you obviously have team members or find the right team behind you.
Absolutely.
What else do you want to say? Where are we ending? What are we wrapping up on? You tell me. You take it away.
Well, I have nothing to plug. Artists, if you want to talk, find me. Instagram, Collabo PR. My email's there. Message me, whatever. I didn't mention Robin Ottolini, I've been working with for a long time. She has an amazing song called Airplane Bottle. So even if one person is listening, and I'm sure you have a huge listenership to this podcast,
Not
but
yet.
even if one person is out, Airplane Bottle, listen to that. Riley Taylor, someone to look out for. Yeah, I just work with amazing artists, and I love to promote them. And so this is one of the first interviews I've ever done. So I don't know if it's appropriate to just suddenly name a few songs and artists you should listen to, but I did it anyway. So edit that if you'd like.
Hell no. Good for you for being true to yourself, for being happy, for waking up every day and enjoying what you do. There are very few people that actually get to do that. So keep going, buddy. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
Thanks for the time. I enjoyed this. It was really fun to look back at some things that I just hadn't thought about in a while and some topics I hadn't really considered. And yeah, I hope someone got something out of this, but it was fun. Thank you.
When I'm in Toronto next, we'll meet up. Until then, keep well.
You too.